All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your busy midweek afternoons here to join us. So obviously this is a pretty cool little event that we are co-hosting with Micro Focus here. We got the special guest Crowd Cow, so they're kind of the star of the show, as everyone probably is interested in the Wagyu steak story and getting one sent to their house. So thank you to Crowd Cow as well. The agenda for today will be, once I get this thing to move, there we go. All right, so here's our agenda. So we're gonna just kind of roll through introductions here real quick, touch briefly on the IAM practice focus here over at PDS, switch it over to the Micro Focus and Rob to discuss a little bit more about Cyber Res. I'm sure a lot of people on here are very familiar with Micro Focus, or at least NetIQ, and they have just recently rebranded into Cyber Res, and so we'll go through that story, and then we'll be able to kick it over to our friends at Crowd Cow and who is Crowd Cow and what exactly is Wagyu steak, and then finish it off with a cooking demonstration. So pretty excited about that, I would say. Just for introduction purposes, these are the individuals that are going to be kind of hosting. So obviously, as I had already previously stated, my name is Greg Manderfeld. I'm with PDS. I'm our IAM consultant here. So I work very closely with our business analysts and our architects here to help drive forward your business outcomes and help you realize your vision towards an IAM focus. Then we also have Shane Popham, who is our PDS's Micro Focus Partner Business Manager. So he and myself work very closely together to make sure that we're able to deliver and succeed or help succeed for our customers. Then we also have Rob. Rob, I'm sorry, I'm going to probably say your last name wrong here. Arago. Arago, thank you. And Rob is our Chief Security Strategist, who will be taking us through Cyber Resiliency. And then we've got the CEO and co-founder over at Crowd Cow, Joe Heitzberg, as well as our the one who's going to be giving us the cooking demonstration, Reed Severson. So those are our individuals. Obviously, if you have any questions while we're going through this, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself or even maybe type it in the chat. So PDS, this is our identity and access management team. So a lot of the individuals on this call today probably have met one, some, or even all of us here. So it really starts at the top with Tamara Corbell, who's our internal Chief Security Officer. She's also our Executive Director of Data Center Product and Services. And she really is the one who spearheads the direction of our IAM group. She is a former CISO and CIO for a couple different healthcare facilities here in the Midwest. So she has a lot of expertise when it comes to cybersecurity and what that means to an organization, and be able to make sure that you are being resilient when it comes to your security practices. She has experience with implementing and even consulting on identity and access management products. Then you've got Scott Brooks, who is our Identity and Access Manager, Services Manager. And Scott leads our team of architects, as well as Mitch Zajac and Jacqueline Powell, our developer and security business analysts. All of our architects here at PDS have, at one point or another, actually have worked for Novell, NetIQ, Micro Focus, one or all of them actually at some point in their career. And we have a combined 80+ years of experience working specifically with the Micro Focus security, identity, and access management product suite. So we have a lot of expertise. Our group has seen many different evolutions over their careers with the product, and how and how the roadmap has came together. And we're in a really, really good position right now to be able to help with all that knowledge that we've gained over the years and transfer that to our customers. And then when you are a PDS customer or an IAM customer, you have most likely worked with myself or Ryan Charles, who is our Senior Project Manager as well. So a little bit about the focus here at PDS as it comes to identity and access. You know, we're really a full-fledged partner. We're a platinum partner of Micro Focus, but we're also a partner towards our customers and our clients. And we help them from, it doesn't matter where you are on your IAM journey. You could be in the very beginning infancy, not knowing exactly where to start. We have the expertise and the consulting experience to be able to help you design and begin an assessment or a workshop and start to be able to kind of realize what that vision may be for your organization. So we actually have done a number of workshops with our customers who end up going with our recommendations from, you know, whether it's a phased approach into identity and access or a full-fledged IAM solution. We're able to kind of help you identify the gaps that you might have currently at your organization, document them, and help you understand what it's going to take to be able to remedy those gaps. From a professional services side, certainly after a workshop has been undertaken, or your organization has an idea of the road you want to go, we have the capabilities to help you and work alongside of you to be able to design and configure and deploy that strategy. And that relates everything from, you know, the actual identity lifecycle. So you think of your provisioning and deprovisioning, maybe a lot of the manual processes that you're utilizing today and helping you automate those. Access reviews and governance, multi-factor, helping you deploy a zero trust strategy so that you get more towards that role-based security. Single sign-on to help your the colleagues that you're supporting at your organizations, and then even helping maybe lower your help desk calls with self-service and self-service password resets. A lot of our customers too will turn to us as kind of a second tier support for them, and they look to us as a managed service partner. So we have a number of clients that utilize us right now for managed services. And inside of managed services, while you get your incident responses and upgrades, we're really kind of your frontline support and be able to help you work through a number of issues that might arise inside of your environment. And then we also work with customers who might have a handle on things, and they're just looking for, you know, a couple of enhancement projects. So think of upgrades, or if they have brought on a newer application and they need assistance with driver development. We have the capabilities here at PDS to be able to help with that engagement. And then we also look at our clients that turn to us for just simple time and material support services. So their incident response, they can send us tickets and we can respond to them, you know, generally fairly quickly. So we have a full-fledged suite here to help assist you with identity and access management, or identity governance and administration, which is kind of the phrase that's being coined now as this evolves. One area that I do want to say that we have seen a major shift towards with organizations is around governance. So the ability to be able to review and certify access reviews and certifications, be able to collect that data and help assist you with your role mining, as well as be able to identify orphaned accounts and even go through security policies with separation of duties, as well as be able to remediate a lot of those compliance issues that might result from a governance audit, and be able to report. So whether you're going through internal or external audits, we are able to assist you with deploying an identity governance solution to be able to help you better realize and audit yourselves and be able to report on the different entitlements that each individual will have inside of your organization. And so this is probably a good little segue over to Rob, who's going to really touch a little bit more base and have a little bit more depth into what identity governance is with Micro Focus. And so with that, I will actually just transfer it over to you, Rob, if you want to start explaining a little bit more about Cyber Res and Cyber Resiliency.
All right, sounds good, Greg. Let me go ahead and Looks like you need to stop sharing so I can take over, it says. Thank you. And I was giving you a pause there on the pronunciation of the last name, because if you got it right, you would have been the first person ever. So don't worry about that.
I thought I was 50-50 and I went with the wrong one.
You were very close. No. All right. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Great. All right. All right. So let me jump in. So again, Rob Borrego, Chief Security Strategist, as you see here, Cyber Res. So we're a line of business within Micro Focus. So about 2 weeks ago now, we officially launched ourselves out as a security entity. I'll take you through what we're doing. I'll explain the different capabilities of what our solutions bring to market, and I'll kind of close it out with actually the brands behind the scenes of what Cyber Res is actually delivering to customer organizations. But our theme is all around cyber resiliency. And I want to jump in and kind of start sharing a little bit around, first and foremost, what a lot of us are very accustomed to now seeing in conversations with different leaders within the business. And the thought process has always been around, when you look at the business, there's this kind of element of, where can cyber actually start driving additional value? And I'll talk about some of those different areas that we do have opportunities to introduce ways to actually potentially increase revenue, save on costs and things of that nature. But a lot of the theme you see here as the kind of bullet points on the right are typically what the board and the executive level are concerned about, right? The brand, the reputation of the organization. If a cyber incident occurs, that data is breached of our consumers, of our business partners, what does that mean to the revenue negatively impact? Very likely, right? And shareholder value for a public entity. One of the things you see at the very top, though, is also around, the ensuring that the business continues to operate and the enterprise resiliency. And when you think about it, historically, we've looked at this from more of that technology side, the technology stack, IT focused on what are we doing for our disaster recovery and our business continuity planning. I'm going to talk about more of taking that and kind of double clicking down into what the cyber aspects of it really need to entail and what you have to ensure that you're focused on and helping drive the organization to deliver some of these additional valuable outcomes. If we start with, though, the principle of resilience as a whole, right? We've all lived through this over this past year, right? That's one of the unfortunate examples of reality, though, is just going through these different adversities that's been thrown at us personally, in business. Everything can be, very volatile at times in how we're having to shift and support what the business needs in these times, as well as deal with our own personal lives, right? So I think it's very centric to the point that we understand it because it's something that, we're dealing with and have been dealing with for over a past year. The principles of resilience, cyber resilience specifically, have been around for many years, and it's been kind of underneath the radar for quite some time. Let's just talk though about, as I mentioned earlier, kind of what are some of the business outcomes, first and foremost, that cyber can actually add value to. And so when
Did we lose them?
lowering costs, risk reduction, of course, but manufacturing. It's always looking at where there is an opportunity to ensure we can actually be securing our environment for our business, but is there something else that we can do on top of that that may actually drive additional revenue, right? Lower the costs as we're going through this. So basically having that seat at the table to add that valuable aspect of cyber into the conversation is absolutely critical. And looking at these different things, these are elements of what, when we look at the business decisions being made, all of these are actually attributes of what's being accounted for, right? Do we have an opportunity to be more competitive because our experience with our end user population, our customers or client, is that much better, right? Are we a trusted brand in the marketplace? So again, think about those as part of kind of thoughts as you're thinking about the different cybersecurity specific areas that you're focused on. But as new initiatives are coming your way, how can you introduce these potentially into that conversation? If we start off and kind of think about cybersecurity, you're all very familiar, I'm sure, with this model you see here in this cybersecurity framework. And I call it out because I want to kind of start showing you this. It's a distinction or an evolution around it as it relates to how we take it to cyber resilience in the frame of thinking and the approach we're going to apply. Within the cybersecurity world, our focal points tend to kind of anchor themselves in two specific areas: prevention and protection. We're going to do the best we can to prevent these attacks from occurring and the best we can to protect our environments as a whole, no matter where it is. The problem is we know that things will occur that we didn't solve for. And when you think about the resiliency aspect, you see the specific goals that are kind of provided here. I'll get into this more, but there's 4 elements of it. In resiliency's model, which these examples are things that, again, have been around for some time. But again, as I said, they've been kind of behind the scenes or underneath the radar. You can look back at actually NIST as well as MITRE, who have very similar architectural models on how to implement cybersecurity focused elements, but then tie them back into what the cyber resiliency aspects should be. So when you start thinking about the goals, right, the 4 goals you see here, the first one on anticipating disruption, what's that all about? It's preparation. Right? It's looking within each of the different organizations that we're a part of, wherever we are now, and understanding what needs to, in essence, continuously run within our environment. It needs to have as much uptime as possible because it's really the anchor that's driving the revenue for the business, right? This is the number 1 priority. You're not necessarily making that decision on your own by any means. You probably have a good idea of what that is, but if taking into account the conversations you have to have with the different stakeholders to understand and agree that those particular assets, as an example, are the ones that we need to ensure continue to run, right? When something occurs, because it will, we all know that in security, we can't stop everything from happening. Well, when it occurs, let's minimize the impact. So this withstanding the attack type of focal point here is the second goal is all around, okay, we're going to do the best we can to, in essence, look for what may occur in our environment and expect these things are going to come our way. But there's all this other stuff that we have no idea about. Well, when that happens, again, we've understood what the business core assets are, the digital assets are. We need to emphasize our protection principles at those particular levels. And I'll talk about some examples on how to do so. Still, again, when those incidents are occurring, as you're trying to minimize that impact, you're also looking at how quickly can we keep it sustaining and then ultimately bring it back to full throttle and be able to support as it did in the past. Or unfortunately, if it was negatively impacted to the point where it was literally brought down, let's get it back on as quickly as possible. All of it comes into the last goal, though, at the end of the day, which is this constant loop around take those learnings, those lessons that we've gone through in unfortunate situations at the time, but feed them back into the anticipation, right? Now we know, we've learned, let's continue to build it back into our cycle of preparation, but our cycle of also how we properly protect and make modifications to better impact, minimize the impact where we can, but also completely prevent that from occurring if possible. So what I want to kind of call out here is an example that was released from the Ponemon Institute just a few months back. And what it calls on is basically asking the question of where there's been cyber resiliency positive momentum. What you'll notice is everything pretty much for the past few years has been the same. But what I just highlighted here for you is brand new in this past year, and it's making a pretty positive impact. And that's around analytics, automation, AI, and machine learning, as well as, of course, we're all seeing this investment to cloud services, right? People pivoting and moving to the cloud. Everyone and their brother's doing it at this point in time. We get that. But I'm going to call out specifically those areas of automation, those areas of leveraging analytics, and especially those areas of using true AI and machine learning, right? Not marketing AI and machine, but how are we actually implementing? What are we doing? How are we supporting people and organizations? What you see next is I'm going to start breaking these particular 4 quadrants out into the way we're starting to approach and some of the things that we've begun doing with other customer organizations, as well as in some cases for us, and we kind of learned along the way over this past year especially, and implemented some of these capabilities to help us be much more resilient and apply it in a way where it drives better positive outcomes for the business as a whole. If we start at the first area of focus around applications, right? It's all around applications really being a key way back into the environment, right? The attackers are going after the application tier. We're all very well aware of that. We've seen exactly what's happened as examples back through SolarWinds, and the Sunburst attack is a great example of it. We kind of were joking a little earlier as we were getting onto this webinar. You know, there was a fireside chat that I had held yesterday. It was all around how do we secure the software supply chain? So again, major emphasis in this. Well, so what do we do? What are the best kind of practices we're starting to implement here? So some of the things that we're working on here and have begun to implement is taking and saying, okay, as we look at the applications that we have within our environment, the applications that we're developing, right, and bringing to market, we can go through and scan through these applications to call out the specific areas that are security defects and allow the teams to then fix those and get them out into production in a best secure fashion. But the problem is consistently that we're not bringing this forward in a manner that really speeds up the process in line with what developers are trying to do, right? Developers are given this, hey, here's the list of what we need you to accomplish and include the feature set within this new application or enhancing the current application that we're bringing to market. They have a deadline. So they're going to code to release and don't want anyone getting in their way. So when security comes knocking on the door and says, okay, thanks for that, let me go and scan that and I'll get back to you when I can, right? That's an issue. That's a concern. So what we're talking about is really inserting ourselves. You can't hear that shift left methodology. Insert ourselves in the front end, but do so in a way, and this is where we're coming into play with our analytics capabilities, is do so in a way where let's work within the developer tool chains. Let's work within the development interfaces, their IDEs, so that as they're coding, we can actually see what they're coding and where they may be introducing a security defect, right? A cross-site scripting exploit, SQL injection exploit, and call it out and let them know, by the way, you've just inserted this potential security defect here, and here's how you can resolve it on the fly. So literally they can click, move on to the next thing. So that seamless integration of pulling security up in the front is one thing to talk about. The execution is now taking it and leveraging the intelligence around analytics to bake it in with the development teams. And we're sitting on top of it with security to validate it's effective. If we pivot to looking at the security kind of operational side of the equation, right? For many years, we've been looking at ways to be able to detect what's going on in the environment so we can quickly mitigate, remediate those issues. And a lot of that has been centered around kind of defining these rules or logic and saying, these are the things that we think may occur. When and if they do, our analysts will receive the alerts and they should kind of have the playbook to understand how to resolve or what steps they need to take to mitigate that issue. Matter of fact, we can extend it to SOAR capabilities and automate a lot of these particular actions you might want to take. And that's great. But the other half of the equation is the main problem statement. And it's focused around the stuff we have no idea is actually occurring within our environment now, never mind what's also coming at us. So one of the things that we did within Cyber Res is we took an opportunity with an investment we made, and we acquired a company 2 years ago now called Interset. And what we leveraged them initially for was to support more of the user entity behavior analytics needs that we wanted to tie into our security operational capabilities. But what we found out is not only did that solve for what our need was at that point in time, but we realized the power of what they actually had created with their unsupervised machine learning was something that we wanted to take into our other solutions as appropriate and where we needed to solve different use cases. So we actually a year ago created our Center of Excellence for Analytics. Interset sits at the core. Interset plays a role into what I just talked about around application security in the example I shared with you. Interset plays a critical role here to be able to call out specifically what's different in the environment, but not what's different in the environment just because it's a change that's not been seen in the past or a behavior that's not been seen in the past. More so, let's say, what do the analysts need to be actually focusing their attention on? So a level of risk is implemented here to understand, again, the assets, right? The applications, the systems, the people, identities that are most sensitive, most prioritized within our particular businesses, our organization specifically. And once we have a handle on that, the engine now is tied into looking at those particular attributes of those particular assets. And when incidents are occurring that get flagged, they're going to be at a higher level risk of prioritization that our analysts are going to receive to now know where they should be actually focusing their energy on. And this allows them to do better to help be driving more resiliency back into the business operations. So look at it from that grain, it's all about focus and prioritization to help this really constant volume of noise that's going over the fence to these guys in the security operations side of the house. The third out of the four areas now drives into data, right? And you think about data specific use cases in security, data privacy initiatives going on left and right. A few years ago with what we saw coming out of the EU GDPR, what we have stateside here with California and now Virginia, And all over the world, there's many different specific privacy regulations. And every time they're kind of just turning up a notch as they're releasing a new one. You have data analytics going on. So each organization saying, hey, I want to unlock the value of the data I have. Let's pump it into these different data lakes and let's our teams come in and leverage it and be able to pull and siphon information that's going to drive new value back into the business. And that's great. But what about the security potential implications as to what data is actually in there? Do you know it's there? Is it data of concern? Is it PII information? What have you? And then there's this pivot, as we talked about earlier, to the cloud. So what are we doing to ensure that we understand where our data resides in the cloud or multi-cloud environments that we may be actually signing up for, and how are we protecting that data? So our focus here really helps solve for those specific use cases and others, but I'll walk you through kind of the example here. So the first thing is, again, working within your organizations, working within the different kind of business functions or lines of businesses themselves and understanding, first and foremost, what data is most important to them. And some of that is definitely going to have you kind of do some coaching as to examples of what you're doing for other parts of the organization. So that helps them understand to prioritize the data for their particular function or business line. Once they've done that, right, now you can agree with what the actual classification of the data should be. And once you've now understood and agreed to that, that manual effort is kind of done, right? This continues for sure, but it's done to a point where now we can start applying the methodology to support technology-driven outcomes. What I mean by that is now let's say, okay, we want to go throughout the organization, understand structured, unstructured, semi-structured data. Where do these particular elements of data reside within our organization? Once we've identified where they actually reside, let's now classify them because we've already agreed with the business line owners what that should look like. Now we have a pretty good model going at this point in time, and it's repetitive. And what I say at this point is you kind of hit the pause button, because as you're going through this exercise, one of the things we found with organizations is there's opportunities introduced this time. Opportunities to be able to actually provide a means of being able to reduce costs as well as reduce risk. And remember, those are 2 of the 5 business outcomes I referred to earlier on. So how do you do that? So when you look at the data side of when we go through and understand where it resides, we're also typically identifying that there may be redundant sets of data. There may be legacy data, redundant applications. All of that introduces the opportunity to say, we should no longer have that data on hand. Let's take it out of the equation, therefore reducing our costs of managing the data, the storage of the data, everything that goes along with it. Oh, and by the way, that data is now removed and reducing our attack surface, so reducing our risk as a whole. Because God forbid, if that data got out into the wild, it shouldn't have been out there in the first place. So shame on us for that happening. Right? So again, some opportunities get inserted at that stage. And then you round it out by saying, we already know what our kind of level 1 data is, right? Our most sensitive data for our organization. So let's focus there and actually ensure that we're protecting it effectively in a manner where it doesn't matter if it's on-prem, if it's up in a cloud environment, we're protecting the data itself, whether it's structured or unstructured. And we can do so at the field level. So we can say, hey, if we want to take a look at social security numbers, people's names, whatever the data element is, that's up to you. But those elements can all have what we call format preserving encryption applied to them in a manner where it contains and consistently keeps the format. So within applications, within users' functions and what they need to do to get their job done, it works. It's great. But if the data gets out into the wild and the attacker thinks they're going to walk away and now monetize it in the dark web, the reality is it may look like it's social security numbers, people's names, and all this kind of treasure trove that you just got your hands on, but it's not the real data. So you're not going to be able to monetize that. At the end of the day, I've protected my organization and I've become more resilient. Even though I was attacked, data was breached, there's nothing of value to the data set. And then rounding it out, the last piece is all around the identities, right? And you heard Greg talked about this as it relates to the identity kind of models and approaches that they've taken for identity access management. So one of the things that we did, and this is a lesson learned for us, right? So we are obviously a manufacturer, right, of the software, of NetIQ's full identity portfolio. And we use, of course, our solutions. As we pivoted last year with everything happening with the pandemic, the majority of our population was already working from home, working from anywhere. 15,000 employees, global offices. We still have, of course, the back office functions that typically were going in, HR, finance, and so on. So the pivot happens. And we were able to obviously get them into the environments in a secure fashion. But we also learned a lesson, which is the experience isn't all that great. So what we did is said, let's emphasize and further invest in how we're delivering our capabilities to our customers, of course, as well. And what it does is it focuses on those two elements of number 1A, the actual user experience, 1B, security, embedded in behind the scenes, so that the user isn't looking for this kind of loophole or workaround to not deal with it any longer. And also what we did is we introduced, actually in the fall timeframe, leveraging Interset. Remember that center of excellence we built around analytics powered by Interset, plugging into our identity portfolio with what we call the risk engine or the risk service. And what that does now is it says, so for example, as a user comes in and is now authenticated, validated to get into the environment, to the systems that they should have access to, everything checks out, everything looks good. We're going to continue to look and see what they're doing, the actions they're taking. And we're going to be able to adaptively respond, which by the way is a key technique around cyber resilience, to support the changes that may be required because we're watching the behavior and it looks a little suspicious. So let's go back, validate, verify they truly still are who they say they are, and someone hasn't hijacked that session or the user's credentials, what have you, and authenticate, validate, we're good to go, keep moving. So that risk engine, adaptive response capability is powered by the analytics and unsupervised machine learning behind the scenes of Interset. What you see here is kind of the piece I want to further emphasize as we round it out. And Greg alluded to this and did a really nice job in talking about, kind of what they're doing as a whole, one of our strategic partners in this space. Identity governance is a very, very key area that we're seeing major emphasis on from organizations, right? The streamlining of being able to deal with the different needs around governance of the identities. And identities, as we all know, really truly is the new perimeter, right? Getting within the organization through the application, ultimately the data, but identities is typically going to be the core focal point. And so there's three principles that we drive at with identity governance and administration. Visibility and insight, so ensuring that we understand the business context and mapping of what it is and who these people are, that they should have access to what, and have visibility again to understand what that looks like on an ongoing basis. The decision making, so as we're looking at and understanding and reassessing who has access to what, does it still align to what the business needs are? Everything looks good. Okay, continue moving forward with that. Ask the people to go through the process of reauthorizing and validating, again, that they truly are the right entitlements. And then the continuous compliance, right? The kind of, let's not just deal with the checkbox as it comes up periodically, because that's a major security issue. Let's this continuously going in a function where it's a endless process that is supported by automation, as well as capabilities around what we can do with analytics. And one of the common themes you'll see across the bottom as the final bullet within each of these three principles is identity intelligence. Identity intelligence is what I was talking about a little earlier, in essence, around the risk engine, right? And the powered capabilities of our analytics baked in. So making the decisions as we go through on the fly, understanding what's going on, is what pulls all of us together to be able to not only provide the visibility to streamline the decision making, but also to keep this continuous loop of compliance going with the adaptive elements baked in, because the power is behind the scenes, watching and understanding what is right and maybe indicating some things that may be of concern that you can either deal with manually or, better yet, where appropriate, automate. As you round it out, the last piece of it is talking about what the actual portfolios are behind the scenes within Cyber Res. So up in the top right, we're on applications that we were talking about. Application security is driven by Fortify. ArcSight is down at the security operations layer. NetIQ is the focal point, and Greg mentioned this as well, our strategic partnership with PDS, driving everything we do around the identity space. And Voltage is the whole data story that I discussed, with Interset sitting at the core, as I mentioned previously, driving the capabilities around the actual marrying of how we better partner up with the human elements as well as the machine elements and drive the reality of what we can do with artificial intelligence capabilities and analytics as a whole. So with that, I hope you enjoyed that overview, and I'll turn it back over now. Actually, I'll turn it over to the folks from CrowdCow now to take you through a little bit of an intro and then the demonstration.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We got you, yep.
We got you, Joe.
Great, it's great to be here. I'll just do a quick intro. I'm Joe Heitzberg, co-founder and CEO of CrowdCow. And then I'll hand it off to Reed to do a cooking demo. My goal today is to give everyone a deeper understanding of what is Wagyu. And I think through that, you can have a better experience with it. You'll know something, you can share that with others. And that's because number two, we want to teach you how to cook it and how to experience it. Because Wagyu, A5 Wagyu in particular, is really as much an experience as it is a meal. So it really helps to understand more about it and obviously how to experience it to make that really an exceptional thing. And of course, the image that you should have in your mind when you hear the word Wagyu is this crazy marbling, or maybe this idea of a beef that melts in your mouth. Or if you've tried it before, this concept of like an umami bomb, this flavor profile that it has. It's just an exquisite product. It's a wonderful experience, and I'm excited to share it. I'm only usually actually doing the cooking, and it's also fun to do that because who doesn't like to have a little bit of the world's best foods in the middle of their day? It would be awesome, and that would be a fun experience for me to share that with you. But I'll hand it to Reed. Reed's actually, I was thinking about this with restaurants shut down. It's a lot harder to go out and experience A5 Wagyu because it is an exquisite ingredient that's usually really only accessible at very high-end restaurants, and many have been closed. But that makes Reed someone who, by virtue of him cooking it a lot, doing photo shoots for selling it on our website, probably someone who's cooked it more than most people, and certainly in 2020. So that'll be great. Crowd Cow is more than just Wagyu, obviously, and I'll take you through that really quick. We're an online destination for high quality meats and seafoods for all occasions. So of course, we have A5 Wagyu for the very special occasion. In fact, we're the largest single retailer of beef from Japan in America at this point. But we have all kinds of beef and pork, chicken, and seafood, stuff for the whole family for every occasion, all on our website. The thing that makes us unique is that we support farmers and producers who raise their meat in the best possible way. So, and we tell that story so that you as a consumer, when you buy from us, have that connection and that understanding and that transparency, which isn't available really anywhere else online at the level we're doing it, and certainly not at your grocery store. So if you care about the environment, or you care about the people who raise the meat, or you want to know that there's not microplastics in the fish, or these sorts of issues, you're going to find all that on our website when you click through and watch this. In fact, you might get a thank you video from one of the farms after you order from us. So it's really a fun and special experience to buy from Crowd Cow. Sustainable, focused, eco-conscious mission. All of our packaging is compostable and recyclable 100%. We actually carbon offset 100% of everything from the birth of the animal to the delivery at your door, 100% offset. And that includes, if you're ordering beef, it includes all the methane emissions, for example. So I really think there's no better way, particularly if you care about the environment, to buy meats and seafood. I could go on and on about this. In January, I was with our shrimp producer in Mexico, and they're the first and only fair trade certified shrimp. And of course, what does fair trade certified mean? In going there, meeting with the fishermen and understanding it, I came to this understanding. It means a lot of things, but one thing that it means is those fishermen are able to take a portion of the proceeds, and they are in control of it. They vote where those are invested. And one of the things they invested in was air conditioning at the elementary school that their kids go to. So if you think about, you want to be a programmer one day and build some of the solutions that we just heard about, you're going to need good math when you're in elementary school. But can you imagine learning math in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade in a 80 to 90 degree classroom versus one that has air conditioning? That's what fair trade means. So when you buy shrimp from Crowd Cow, your dollars are literally going to support air conditioning in the classrooms of the fishermen's kids. If you think about their future earnings potential, the kind of education they can take, that's crowd cow, that sort of thing. We bring that to you. So anyways, enough about crowd cow. Let's get to the main thing, which is Wagyu. Wagyu's absolutely incredible. I will mention that we got into it because we were selling meats this way and meeting the farmers. We started in Seattle. We started with farms in Washington. We grew nationally. We're a 6-year-old company, but very early on, customers were asking us for Wagyu, for Kobe beef, the most famous of the Japanese Wagyu. And it just so happens, I had double majored in Japanese and computer science, and I'd spent a good amount of time living in Japan as an exchange student, working on a farm, and then later working for a high-tech company in Tokyo as a programmer. So I'd learned the language and studied for 5 years, but I hadn't used it in 10 years. Now we're doing this company, and customers are asking us for, hey, would you do this? This is so cool. Get Kobe beef like from a farm in Japan and do that same thing, but from there. And I thought, wow, geez, little do people know I can dust off my Japanese skills, make a few phone calls, and maybe we can get it going. So this was in 2017. I was cold calling the slaughterhouse in Awaji Island, part of Hyogo Prefecture, where I'd figured out about 70% of Kobe beef is raised. So I called those guys and I invited myself to basically a farm co-op, what's called Edaniku Kyoreikai, which is basically cattle auction. And I showed up and I said, I want to learn about this. I want to buy your beef. I want to bring it over. And that led us to Kagoshima. I don't know if you guys all have the beef at home right now. If you have it from Kagoshima, that was a second trip. I went down further south. They told me south is where a lot of great cattle come from. In fact, they won the Wagyu Olympics. So I went there, heard about this olive Wagyu, took a couple of years, got that first time ever to sell in the United States and a lot of different regions. So that's kind of my background and connection to why we're doing this and how we're able to bring you this incredible beef. But let's dive to like, what is Wagyu? Okay, so Wagyu is just a word that means Japanese cow. So these are actually the characters, these top two, Wagyu. It means this is an old, like, if you imagine like hundreds of years ago, this character was actually used in the context of the word for Japan. And then they changed it to a different character. But for a Japanese person looking at this character, it still evokes that old school, distant past Japan. It kind of means harmony as well. So it sort of means harmonious Japan. And then this character just means cow, like the animal. So it just means Japanese cow. Harmonious Japanese cow. That's all it means. When you think about the marbling, the melts in your mouth experience, the umami bomb, there's more to it than just the word Wagyu. So I'll break it down right now for you. There are 4 breeds of cattle that are native to Japan. So just like, other animals have different breeds, so do cattle. I don't know if any of you ever spent any time on farms in America, but maybe you've heard of Angus. Angus is a breed, or Charolais, that's a breed. Well, in Japan, there are 4 breeds that you've never heard of, but are native to Japan. There's the Kuroge Washu. That's this one, Kuroge. It literally means black hair, black hair. There's the Kashoku Wagyu, which is also known as Aka Ushi in America. It's more common. Third one is called Nihon Tankakushu. There's Mukaku Washu. That's the 4th one. None of them matter except this one, the black hair, the Kuroge Washu. It really should be the character's black hair. It really should be like the characters for marbled meat. Because what's special about the Kuroge Washu is that it has a genetic predisposition to creating crazy marbling inside the fat. So like, I don't know about you, but if I eat food, or I eat too much food, I'm going to produce muscle if I don't work out so much, and fat. I'm not going to produce as much muscle as I do fat. All of that's going to go on the outside, about right here on my belly. That's my genetics. I metabolize into fat, it goes right on my belly. The Kuroge Washu, genetically speaking, it just does this crazy freak of nature thing where it pushes all that fat into the interior of the muscle tissue. So you get this fine grain, crazy marbling inside the meat. And no other breed of cattle does that. Now, of course, your Angus prime steak has a little marbling inside. That's what you value in a prime steak. But it has that huge fat cap on the outside, right? The one that you cut off with your knife. It's chewy. Kuroge Washu puts all that fat on the inside, and you love that because it's delicious. It also produces a softer fat that melts at body temperature. It becomes soft even at room temperature. And so it's not like, if you had a big hunk of it, it's not like chewy. It's like soft. So soft mouthfeel, melts very easily at a low temperature, and there's a ton of it. That's Kuroge Washu, that breed. We love that. We all love that as people who love good steak, right? Now, what is Kobe beef then? Kobe beef is arguably the most famous word in the world of Wagyu. This actually right here is a Kobe beef statue. It's like a little. This weighs a ton, but this is very heavy. It's like solid. I don't know what metal it is, but it's very heavy. This is the Kobe beef kind of symbol of being a member of Kobe. So Kobe beef is a brand. That's the easiest way to understand what is Kobe beef. Kobe beef is a brand name of one of the regions of Japanese Wagyu in Japan. It's one of the brands. There are many brands, just like in America, you got many brands of shoes, Adidas, Nike. This would be like Nike, right? So in Japan, beef is a lot more like wine. There are regional brands, and there are coalitions and people with brand names like Kobe, and they're selling their beef to a standard that represents quality somehow, one way or the other, with that name associated. So Kobe beef, to be, just to put a precise definition on it, is a brand name for Kuroge Washu, raised in Hyogo Prefecture, born, raised, slaughtered in Hyogo, raided by people who are members of the organization, sold by people who are members of the organization, and raised obviously by farms who are a member of that organization. So it's sort of like a little bit of a mafia-like brand that controls who's going to be participating in this thing and who's going to get the stamp of approval. And it has to be rated out as what's called an A4 or an A5 level in terms of the level of marbling, how much marbling is in the meat. So it's inspected for that. So those are roughly the criteria. Has to have a BMS 7 score and an A4, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be a member of the association officially to sell it. There are very few people who are members of it. We are members of it, official members. So we're kind of part of that Kobe beef mafia. But there's many other regions of Wagyu in Japan. Each have very similar criteria. And again, it all goes back to that Kuroge Washu breed. All of the luxurious, crazy marbling, that one that you want, that premium Japanese Wagyu experience, every single one of those brands have one thing in common. Kuroge Washu is the breed. So that's something that almost no one knows. All right. Now I kind of said, like, now you're thinking like, but wait, Joe, I heard it's like massage and they drink beer and other stuff. There's got to be more to it. In fact, I've never heard, Joe, that it's about the genetics. And yeah, of course, there's more to it. But the number one most important driver is the genetics. There is more to it than that. You raise the cattle in a stress-free way. You feed the cattle healthy ingredients. But it really, my point is, it's not like foie gras or other kinds of, luxury food items. It's not just take any old cattle and in Japan, force feed it and it turns into Wagyu. It's only happens with that breed. Okay. And it's not about force feeding, quite the opposite. It's about giving the cow or the steer a very nice life with low stress. It's about clean water and vitamin nutritionists measuring and putting in the right vitamin content in the feed at the different cycles of the life, genetic breeding programs. It's a crazy attention to detail that produces it, but it's all focused on that one breed. So Wagyu in America, worth touching on. Japanese Wagyu DNA, Kuroge, and actually one of the other four breeds, the Akaushi, were actually imported to the United States in small quantities in the 1990s. eventually, actually, both the meat imports and the DNA imports were completely banned from being exported. In 2012, small quantities of the beef only resumed import to the US. Okay, but the DNA of Wagyu is still banned from import. So there are farmers in America, handful of breeders and cattle ranchers that are raising Wagyu from Japan, either Akaushi or Kuroge Washu, the one that's special, because they'd imported the DNA before it was cut off. Okay, so that's part of why you hear about American Wagyu. But I want you to know one thing. The vast majority, and I really mean 99.99% of anything that you might see called Wagyu that was raised in America, especially if you see like Kobe burger or stuff like that, almost certainly is going to be Angus beef, maybe crossbred with Wagyu. And that's pretty common, this Wangus, Wagyu crossed with Angus, as we affectionately call it. But it's not Japanese A5 Wagyu raised with those kind of meticulous breeding and raising standards and a gene pool of Kuroge that's exceptional and not available to us, et cetera, and so forth. It's not going to be on that same level. In fact, my position is buy them both, do a tasting flight. They're awesome. They're all awesome. I love a good Wangus steak. It's great, but it doesn't have the melts in your mouth experience. It doesn't have that umami flavor. It's just a different steak, and it can be amazing. We sell those too. We sell both Wangus crossbred steak as well as purebred 100% DNA Kuroge, but raised here in America out on open pasture in a different method, totally different from the Japanese stuff, although genetically the same. Makes sense? We can go deeper, guys. I can go all day deeper, but I won't. I'll spare you. All right. What does A5 Wagyu taste like? So I mentioned umami a couple times. Umami is one of these things that most people don't really understand, and I think it's difficult to understand. Okay, your tongue, your mouth, you can taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Those are the 5 distinct taste receptors that you have in your mouth. But people have a hard time describing umami. I think you could think sour. You know what I'm talking about. But what am I talking about with umami? I think the way to understand it is like, think about Parmesan cheese or mushrooms or miso soup or foods like that. And if you take away what's different about those, you're kind of left with umami. All right. I don't know if that helped. If you really want to get familiar with umami, eat Japanese A5 Wagyu a lot, and you'll come accustomed to it. You'll recognize it right away, and you'll start to recognize it in other foods. So that's kind of umami. It's a high degree of umami in A5 Wagyu. And by the way, just because it's fun to talk about fat so much, because it's really the story here, Japanese A5 Wagyu, the reason for the umami flavor goes back to that genetics and the fat. That fat is unique. It has a lower melting point, so it's softer, but it also has much higher levels of oleic and glutamic acid. So if you measure the chemistry of, regular beef fat versus Wagyu fat, you'll find much higher oleic and glutamic acid. So what? Those two together create umami flavor. And 2, oleic acid, when it's in high quantities like that, is actually good for you. It's good for your heart. So it's an anti-inflammatory fatty acid that's actually good for you. In fact, they actually prescribe oleic acid in pill form in Japan. And it's very similar to what's found in a lot of different fish oils. So extremely healthy. You can have your, crazy decadent red meat, and you can know like, oh, partly, it's got this heart healthy oleic acid content and feel good about it. So that's great. That's not official doctor advice for any of you, but it's something to know. Let's see. We're going to move on from here to the cooking part. Maybe I will just open up for any quick questions maybe before we transition. As we get into the cooking, just know this, like, there's no secret to being a great chef, I think. And I'm not a great chef, but I can cook meals that will blow people's minds because I have one secret, which is start with outstanding ingredients. So whether, you're starting with a Japanese A5 Wagyu, or in really any of the products we sell on our website, starting with great quality ingredients that have been raised right in a low stress way, that don't have microplastics and chemicals in them and all that, they're going to taste better too, and they're going to be healthier. So when it comes to the Japanese A5 Wagyu, you've won the battle already by having that piece of meat. All you need beyond that is a nice sear, some salt to bring out those natural flavors, and just to sit back and enjoy it with the people that you're with. So if there are any questions, I can pause and answer a few here. But the reason that, and I have a few more minutes, but the reason I can't do the cooking demo, which I'd love to do, is that I have another meeting here in a couple minutes. But any questions? Awesome. And I'm happy. I don't know if there's any, I can't see the comment chat, but if there's any questions, if you want to verbalize them, we can do that here. Or if you have them later, I'd be more than happy to answer questions later. You can shoot me an email at joe@crowdcow.com. I've got a ton of content on the blog. If you go to crowdcow.com/Wagyu and you click to the blog, we've got tons of blog posts about our trips to Japan and all the other topics. And that's a great place to go to. But thanks for having me. And I'll hand it over to Reed if there are no questions.
I have one quick.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I had one quick question. The 85, that's not like 85 day aged or anything.
85.
It sounds. Oh, A5.
It's
A5.
the letter.
Okay.
The letter A, the number 5.
Gotcha. That's the rating. Okay.
There's a rating scale. There's actually 2 dimensions to the scale. There's A and 5. The A actually has to do with really something that has no bearing on you as a person eating it. It has to do with like the yield of, it's kind of like how much meat was on the bones of this animal. If that was looking good, it's an A. If that was a little less, it's B. But like the steak that you're pulling off that animal, it's amazing. If it's a 5, that means crazy marbling. If it's a 4, that means really good marbling beyond like a prime steak in America. So if you got that 4 or a 5, you're in the territory of a mind-blowing, Japanese steak. Whether it's A or B, literally has no bearing on it. Of course, we're Americans. We want everything to go to 11. So everybody just always wants A5. But I got to tell you, like, just for your, one thing you could take away from this is, start with the A5, great. Try the A4 because it's a little less marbled. You get a little more meat flavor. You can eat more of it. The one, if I'm eating, by myself and I'm in the mood for Japanese Wagyu, I'm choosing A4 because
it's more of the steak connoisseur's cut.
Yeah,
you can enjoy the flavor more.
Yeah, you can enjoy the flavor, exactly. And then as you get into offcuts and things, same thing happens. So you could be A5, but go to like a lesser, so to speak, lesser cut. It's very different than if you're in an Angus, give me a rump steak. Yeah, I'll take the rump steak. You say that and you're like not thinking it's very good. With a Japanese A5 or even an A4 rump steak, best steak I ever had in my entire life was an A4 rump steak. So there you have it. I'll hand it over to Reed now and we'll start the actual cooking demo. But thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to kind of share this. And I hope truly hope you enjoy your Japanese A5 Wagyu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe, for joining us. 2 quick things, actually. I don't know what I'm more impressed with. One, your ability to source it and provide it for us consumers, or B, your pronunciations of the Japanese language. That was pretty impressive. Lastly, too, I don't know, do you do DoorDash? Because I'm pretty quick to run upstairs to put a halt on what's going on up there for dinner.
Interesting. No, we ship everything. We do ship nationally. Comes in a nice box, handwritten note, everything like that. So give it a try.
Awesome.
But thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Yep. Bye.
All right, folks, let's get to the fun part. What do you say? Can you guys all see me okay? Is everything good?
Yeah, you're looking good.
Perfect. Okay, so as Joe said, I'm on the merchandising team. Our regular responsibilities are managing the front end of the website. So as a customer, everything you see from products, landing pages, recipes, how to cook, that's all us that we're getting on the website. But we do a lot of other stuff behind the scenes. We manage the intake of samples Whenever we're going to bring on a new producer, we really want to be thorough and vet their product. And that really just means cooking up and sampling. So the merch team will get together regularly. We'll cook up samples. We'll taste them together. We'll share feedback. And then if we like that product, we'll take more additional samples, bring them to a photo shoot, and get the product built and on the website. But so yeah, I do a lot of cooking, and that's why I'm here today to cook this A5 top sirloin for you guys. Let's talk a little bit more about this cut in specific. Like the A5 top sirloin this is kind of so Japanese Wagyu, like Joe mentioned, is an experience almost more than a meal. The A5 top sirloin is kind of an extra layer into that special experience because top sirloins, A5 graded top sirloins, are really hard to get in the United States. And that's just due to the small amount, the quantities that are being imported. So when you go to a Japanese Wagyu retailer, whether that's online or at a specialty butcher shop or meat counter, you're really not going to have access to top sirloins that often. It's usually going to be filet mignons, New York strip steaks, petite strip steaks, ribeyes. So I'm really excited to be cooking for you this for you guys, and it's kind of an extra special experience. But the top sirloin, it's cut from the sirloin muscle, which is at the rear end of the cow, and that sits just below the tenderloin muscle. A couple things to know is the sirloin muscle is a weight-bearing muscle, so that muscle actually gets exercise from the daily movements of the cow versus the tenderloin, which sits right above it. That's non-weight bearing and gets zero exercise. So that means really one big difference is the fat content. The A5 top sirloin is going to be slightly a natural, it's more of a naturally leaner cut. That's not to say that it doesn't have the fat content. It's still an A5 top sirloin. It's just naturally slightly leaner. And that means it's kind of like similar to the A4 Joe was talking about. You kind of get a more true beef flavor as you eat this, because there's just slightly less fat content. There's still that melt in your mouth, buttery richness element, don't get me wrong, but you actually get more of a robust beef flavor from a naturally leaner cut like this A5 top sirloin. And just one thing, Joe mentioned the experience. I love cooking Japanese Wagyu with like a group of friends. If there's like a Seahawks game, I'll have some friends over, cook it up, cut into strips, and then we each sear our own little strips. It's just such a special experience. I really highly suggest you guys, have some family over, have some friends over, because I'll see my friends after cooking for them. They won't stop talking about Japanese Wagyu like 2 months later. It's just really a special thing. So yeah, let's talk about, so when you receive your package, let's talk about preparations, okay? So you're gonna get your steak in the mail. It's gonna be frozen. You wanna put that in the freezer until you wanna cook it. And the easiest way I explain it to people is just put it in the fridge the night before you plan to cook it. It can stay thawed in the fridge for up to 48 hours. After that, it's gonna lose its quality. So the easiest way to think about it is pop it in the fridge the night before you're gonna cook it. And then when you do that, you wanna pull it out the night, so it's thawed out, you put it in the night before, you're in the kitchen, you're gonna start getting ready to cook. Pull your package, it's still in its package, put it on the counter for 15 minutes. And that's gonna allow the steak to rise up to room temperature. So you get a nice even sear when you put it in the pan. If you put it in the pan when it's slightly cold still, it's actually gonna curl up on itself and it's not gonna lay flat and get that nice even sear across the surface. So let that rise to room temperature for about 15 minutes. And it's also gonna kind of prep that fat that's inside the meat. Japanese Wagyu fat has a lower melting point than regular beef. So it's really just gonna kind of prep that fat so everything in there is gonna cook really nicely. So let's come on over here. So here we have let me get my camera set up for you guys here. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, I've taken my A5 top sirloin and I've cut it into strips about 3/4 to an inch thick. And this is kind of the traditional Japanese steakhouse method. You want to cut it into strips so you can season all sides and sear all sides. And this kind of goes back to the fact that like this is such a rich and fatty meat that you really do want to kind of slow it down, cut it into strips, and just enjoy small portions of it because it's special and you want to share it with your friends and family. Just take your time, really make an experience out of it. So I'm making sure my pan's all on hot, medium high heat for the sear here. I'm gonna put some salt on there. Just sprinkle a little bit. I'm using just coarse kosher salt. You can use whatever you have. And I like to kind of let the flavor of the Wagyu speak for itself. So I'm just going to be putting salt on this today. But let me tell you guys, the fun thing about cooking a steak like this and cutting it into strips is you're not cooking the whole steak just seasoned in salt. Like you could do one strip with salt. You could get a little crazy and do one strip with Montreal steak seasoning. You could do one with, a local butcher, a butcher rib from your local butcher. Totally play around with it. That's the fun part of this. Is like, I mean, I would suggest doing some strips with just salt so you get the true taste. But feel free to play around. That's the fun part of it. So let's flip these over and season the other side with a little bit of salt.
So that brown color is normal?
The brown is going to be, that's a normal color. And what you can do, if you think your steak looks a little bit brown, what we recommend is take it out of the package and let it just sit on a plate and it'll actually bloom. I was a little short for time today, but if you put it after that 15-minute period, you can, while you're gonna rest your steak for 15 minutes, you can take it out of the packaging if it looks brown, and that'll bloom it, and it'll kind of just it'll slowly turn a redder color. Okay, folks, so we're seasoned. I'm just gonna do one strip at a time right now, just to make things easy. Okay, so normally you would not oil your pan at all with A5. If you're cooking a New York strip, a filet mignon, a ribeye, it's got so much fat content, I wouldn't even worry about it. With this sirloin, it's a little bit naturally leaner, so I'm gonna put a little spray of some canola non-cooking or non-stick spray. You totally can take a paper towel and get some olive oil, avocado oil on there and just kind of brush your pan. That will totally work. And for pans, we recommend stainless steel. You can totally use a cast iron. The only thing is, cast iron is really hard to control the heat if you go too hot. Like I had this on the burner while I've been talking to you guys, and I can see it might be a little too hot, so I'm turning it down. Stainless steel is way more manageable for heat. All right. So let's hit it with a little bit of this. Yeah, it's hot. And let's drop it in, and we're gonna do 40, you can do 45 to a minute on your sear. And I'm gonna drop it in for 45 seconds. Here we go. I've got my tongs. I'm going to apply just a little slight pressure on here, just to make sure that's getting the surface contact for the sear.
Hey, Reed, I have a question for you.
Hey.
Traditionally, you always hear about like your top 5-star restaurants, how they get like that nice perfect crust on their steak is, they have like grills or ovens that get upwards of like 600, 700, 800 degrees. For this type of cut or this type of beef, do you need to have it? Are you going for as hot as you can, or can you, work with, say, like a grill that would be like 350 degrees or something like that?
Are you talking about, are you talking about broiling your Wagyu?
Well, I could, I'm thinking of people who would want to either slap it on the grill or do it the way that you have it here. Generally, I've always been kind of taught under the rule of thumb that you want to get it as hot as can be to get that crust.
Yeah, really, the fat sears so well on this. I go medium-high heat on this thing. And I would not recommend grilling on the grill. I would only recommend doing pan searing for this.
Good to know.
Okay, we're coming up on our last 10 seconds here. I'm gonna do a little sear on the sides here. Just pop that up. Do that for about 5 to 10 seconds. Okay. So here we have it, folks. And I like to do really small bite-sized pieces, but maybe you want to do, bigger chunks. It's all about the experience for me. So when I'm cooking the Japanese Wagyu, I have people around me, so I kind of want everyone to get a taste. And I don't know how you guys are doing on time, but I'm happy to I'd love to throw another strip on if you guys would like.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like this? Lovely.
Yeah, that's
I said, you guys,
mean right there, though. You're eating it in front of us.
Yeah, that's not fair.
That's part of the job, you guys. But seriously, this is an A5 top sirloin, but like I said, it's a little bit leaner, and I'm really excited for you guys because you really get that best of both worlds. You get a little bit of that melt in your mouth, and insanely robust beef flavor, and you can eat more. It's a little, like I said, it's not as rich and fatty. It's still got those elements, but you can actually enjoy more versus a huge A5 ribeye that might be too rich and you can only have a couple bites of. So let's throw another one on.
So Reed, while you're doing that, I know that maybe others might we're in different time zones here, so others may be wrapping up their evening or going to another meeting. So real quick, while Reed is slapping on his next strip here, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and hopefully you learned a little bit something about the PDS Micro Focus practice, as well as a little bit more about Wagyu steak. And so you should be on the lookout for your package. I'll work with Shane here at the end of this and be letting you all know when you should be able to expect it coming to the mail. But if you do have any questions regarding anything that you might have seen today, I know I've gotten a couple direct messages from some of you. Feel free, here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, email or phone, does not matter, or your PDS account director, or if you don't happen to know who your contractor is, here's the general sales line, sales number, and sales alias email for PDS here. We are more than happy to help you on this journey. It's a long one. It's one that's it takes time to plan, and we really hope to be there with you every step of the way. So thanks everyone for joining. If you can stick around to watch watch Reed a little bit more, great. But otherwise, that will conclude